Okay, so you've probably seen these headlines everywhere, right? TikTok ban, national security, even free speech violations. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it really feels like one of those things where the headlines don't tell the whole story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're going deep. We've got news articles, legal analyses, even firsthand accounts from TikTok creators to try to understand what's really going on with this potential TikTok ban in the U.S.
And what it could actually mean for all of us.
Right. So we're on a mission to figure out the real world impact because it's about way more than just, dance videos and silly trends.
Absolutely.
But before we get into all that, let's do a super quick TikTok 101 just in case.
Okay, sounds good.
So it's an app for making and sharing short videos, but the scale here is kind of mind-blowing. We're talking 170 million American users, according to ChatGPT. That's massive.
Yeah, and, People.com highlighted that it's become a real source of income for a lot of people. Creators, small businesses. TikTok's not just a hobby for them, it's how they make a living.
Which makes this whole ban thing even more serious, right?
Sure.
So how did we even get to this point? What's the backstory here?
Well, it all starts with a law that was passed in April 2024 called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is. Luckily, most people just call it PFACA.
Yeah, much easier. So what does PFACA actually do?
Basically, and Wikipedia explains this pretty clearly, it gives the U.S. government the power to force the sale of any social media company's U.S. operations if that company is controlled by what they call a foreign adversary.
And in this case?
China, yeah.
Ah, okay, so that's where ByteDance comes in.
Right, ByteDance.
Yeah.
TikTok's parent company, which is based in China.
Got it.
And as ChatGPT points out, according to PFACA, ByteDance has until January 19th of this year to sell off its U.S. operations, or else.
Or else. The ban happens.
Exactly. A nationwide TikTok ban.
Wow, so that's just a few days away. No wonder everyone's freaking out.
Yeah, you can say that again.
But ByteDance isn't just taking this lying down, are they?
Oh, absolutely not. Wikipedia also mentions that they're fighting back, claiming that PFACA is unconstitutional and violates free speech rights.
It's a big legal battle.
It is. This whole thing went all the way to the Supreme Court.
And that's where things get really interesting. The AP News, ChatGPT, and Vulture all reported that the Supreme Court just heard arguments on January 10th, so just a couple of days ago, and it seems like they're leaning toward upholding the ban.
Yeah, everyone's kind of waiting with bated breath for their decision. It could come any day now.
Crazy. Okay, so before we get into what a post-TikTok world might look like, I think it's important to understand both sides of this argument.
Right, because it's a lot more complicated than just ban it or let it be.
Totally. So what are the main arguments here?
Well, the U.S. government's case, which is something we saw across multiple sources, basically boils down to national security concerns. They're worried about data security, the potential for the Chinese government to access user information, and even manipulate what Americans are seeing on the app.
Okay, I see. So basically they're saying there's a possibility that the Chinese government could be using TikTok to, spy on Americans or influence their opinions.
That's the gist of it, yeah.
I can definitely see why that would be concerning, but I was also reading some articles, like one from CNN, that had some pretty strong counterarguments.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are definitely other perspectives out there.
Some critics are saying there's no concrete evidence that the Chinese government has actually done any of that, at least not yet.
Right. And, like we were talking about before, millions of Americans use TikTok. Lots of them are making money from it.
Yeah.
A ban would be a huge deal.
Exactly. It feels like, I don't know, maybe there should be another solution?
It's definitely tricky.
Yeah. But for now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the human side of all this. Because beyond all the politics and the legal stuff, there are real people whose lives are intertwined with TikTok.
Absolutely. It's easy to forget about that sometimes.
Totally.
Oh.
I was reading this article in People.com, and they had these stories about creators like Lexi Larson. She built her entire loungewear business called Sunday Cherries based on her TikTok earnings.
Wow.
Yeah. She said she wouldn't have had the $50,000 in startup capital otherwise.
That's incredible. It's a perfect example of how TikTok has created these opportunities, especially for people who might not have had them before.
Exactly. And then there's another woman, Priscilla Lopez, also in the People.com article. She used TikTok Shop to pay off $10,000 of her family's credit card debt.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about real people with real fears about what this ban could mean for them.
Yeah, and it's not just hypothetical anymore. They're already seeing the impact. People.com said that fewer brands are doing deals on TikTok, and shoppers are hesitant to buy anything because, well, who knows how long it'll even be around.
Right. It's like this uncertainty is already hurting people's livelihoods.
And the article also mentioned that a lot of creators are trying to diversify, putting their content on YouTube, Instagram, just in case, but they all said that TikTok pays way better.
Yeah, which goes to show how TikTok isn't just another platform. It's this whole ecosystem that's fostered its own unique style of content and monetization.
It's true.
It's not that easy to just replicate that somewhere else.
Definitely not. And on top of all that, we can't forget the emotional side of things. This isn't just a job for a lot of these people, it's a community. It's their creative outlet, a way to connect with others.
Yeah, People.com really emphasized that sense of community. People have made real friendships on TikTok. They've found support systems there. A ban wouldn't just disrupt their income, it would disrupt their lives.
Absolutely. It's like shutting down a whole social space, a space that has given people a voice, brought them together, helped them build something real. And on a bigger level, TikTok's had a huge cultural impact.
For sure.
Like People.com pointed out that it's given regular people a platform to share their stories and, be seen in a way that they couldn't before.
Yeah, it's totally democratized content creation.
Wow.
Anyone with a smartphone and a story to tell can potentially reach a massive audience.
And we've seen what happens when you give people that power. Businesses get built, careers get launched, people find ways to advocate for the causes they care about.
Exactly. This ban, it threatens to stifle all that.
It really makes you think about the role technology plays in our society.
It does. And about what happens when governments try to control online spaces.
Yeah, because this isn't just about one app, right? It's a much bigger conversation. We'll be back in a moment to talk about that.
Sounds good.
It's kind of unsettling when you realize how much power these massive tech companies have, right?
It is, and it's not just the companies themselves. This whole TikTok situation also raises questions about, how much control government should have over what we see and do online.
It's like, where do you draw the line between protecting national security and censoring what people can access?
Right. It's a tricky balance.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to think about, not just as lawmakers or tech giants, but as individuals, too.
Totally. And speaking of thinking about it, I feel like there's another layer to this TikTok thing that we haven't really explored yet.
Oh.
We've talked about the potential economic fallout for creators if this ban happens, but what about the effect on, their creativity itself, their ability to actually do what they do?
That's a really interesting point. It's like there's this human cost that often gets lost in all the political back and forth. TikTok has created this unique environment, right? This specific ecosystem where a certain type of creativity has flourished. We were just talking about Lexi Larson building her business, Priscilla Lopez paying off debt, and there are countless others out there who have found community and support through TikTok.
Exactly. And it's not as easy as just telling them, oh, move over to YouTube or Instagram. You have to acknowledge the specific thing that TikTok has cultivated.
Exactly.
For a lot of creators, this isn't just a hobby, it's their profession. They've honed their skills on that app. They've built an audience there. They've learned how to thrive within that specific algorithm and community.
It's like telling a chef, okay, now you have to cook in a totally different kitchen with different ingredients and even a different style of cooking.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
They might be able to adapt, but it's not going to be the same. And what happens to the people who can't make that transition?
Right.
Their skills, their audience, their whole creative approach might not work on another platform.
It's kind of a wake-up call for all of us, isn't it?
It is. For creators and for the people who consume their content.
We need to think about which platforms we're choosing to support, what the power dynamics are, and what could happen if we, put all our eggs in one basket.
For sure. Because this whole situation has shown that even in the digital world, actions have consequence.
It really has. So as we wait for the Supreme Court's decision, I think this is a chance for all of us to kind of reflect on things. How much control should governments have over online spaces? What are the trade-offs between security and freedom of expression? These are big questions.
There are. And ultimately, the future of TikTok, and maybe even the internet as we know it, hinges on how we answer them. It's up to all of us to stay informed, engage in these conversations, and think about what all of this means in the long run.
This deep dive has really shown how just one app, one seemingly simple thing, can be so tangled up in global politics, economics, personal dreams, the future of how we express ourselves online.
Mm.
It's a lot, but hopefully it's given you a new perspective on those headlines and a reason to pay attention to what happens next.
Because this isn't just about TikTok. It's about the digital world we're all a part of. And the choices we make now will determine what that world looks like in the future.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some final thoughts on this whole TikTok saga. It really makes you wonder, even if TikTok survives this whole legal battle, are we all maybe a little too reliant on these huge platforms? Like, what happens if, I don't know, the next big app faces the same kind of threat?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something I think our listeners should really consider because whether it's TikTok or some other app we haven't even heard of yet, this situation has really shown us how vulnerable we are.
Right.
We put so much of ourselves into these online spaces, like our time, our creativity, our livelihoods.
It's true, but what can we actually do about it?
Well, I think the first step is awareness.
Right.
Understanding how these platforms work, the power dynamics, the potential risks, and also recognizing that it's important to not put all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yeah.
Diversify our online presence a little.
Yeah, makes sense. So maybe this whole TikTok thing, regardless of what happens with the Supreme Court, can be a learning experience for all of us.
I think so.
Like a reminder to be more aware of the online world we're all living in and to really think about the choices we make in that world.
Exactly. Because when it comes down to it, it's our data, our creativity, our voices that are at stake.
That's a lot to think about.
It is, but these are important conversations to have.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of TikTok, national security, and what it all means for the future of, well, the internet as we know it.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.